What is up, ladies and gentlemen? But most of all, you ladies out there, thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg, because if you don't break the silence will break you. We got a banger for you today. Just found out James Harden just re-signed with the Philadelphia 76ers on a 2-year deal, 1 year, and then a player option for the next year. 2-year, $68.6 million. If you don't know what the player option is, that means he's under contract for 1 year, and then next year he then would have the choice to re-sign or decline that option and then be a free agent again, basically. So that's how that works. We're going to get into it. We got a lot of basketball to talk. This is a huge deal for the Eastern Conference, and I'm pumped to talk about it. Please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. We're growing at a rapid pace here on Break the Silence. Our subscribers shot past 200. I couldn't believe how fast they're going up, and I'm super excited to keep heading in that direction. As soon as we hit 300 subscribers, I'm dropping my top 50 current NBA players videos in 5 different videos, breaking them down in 10. So please help me get there. Tell a friend, tell a loved one, tell an enemy, and let's get there together. But let's get into it. James Harden signed this deal. James Harden, who was often called selfish, didn't care about winning, cared more about partying with Lil Baby in Paris. What does this mean? So let's look at it from an objective perspective. Now, I will start with this. James Harden in Houston was one of my favorite players in the NBA. I am a massive NBA fan. As you see all the jerseys I got, I just love basketball. So they're pretty much, I love watching so many players. James Harden was in my top 3 favorite to watch because he was scoring at such a ridiculous pace and he could score in so many ways. Now, a lot of people hated his free throws, but his step back 3 was incredible. He was also athletic enough to dunk. He was very good at finishing through contact. And I just thought it was incredible because he's also a great passer. And that Rockets team was just a lot of fun to watch with him on the court, and they were very good. So James Harden was one of my favorite players. Then he went to Brooklyn. And I'm going to be honest, I don't like Brooklyn. That team was, I personally don't like when it feels like a team was created to be so much better than the rest of them. So I am all right with the current power structure of the NBA right now. I think it's fantastic. I think we have a lot of competitive teams to where we go into next season, and you might say the Warriors are the favorites or the Bucks are the favorites. But would it surprise you if the Celtics or the Nuggets or the Suns or, the Heat, Nets, Sixers, if any of those teams competed, would it surprise you? No, because that's the way the NBA is set up right now, and I love that. So James Harden going to Philadelphia, I thought was a good thing because I didn't want to see him with Kyrie and KD in Brooklyn personally. And James Harden signing this contract, what he did was he had a $47 million player option for this year. He declined that. He decided to take less money, allowing them to sign PJ Tucker and Danuel House to really boost their lineup a little bit, add a little bit of depth because they needed another player or two. And in fact, in PJ Tucker's case, they needed some toughness because as much as Embiid talks on social media and as big and physical as he is, I don't know that he brings that toughness to the squad. And, Tyrese Maxey, James Harden are both really good offensive players. Sometimes you just need a guy like PJ Tucker to come in and, for lack of a better word. But James Harden last year averaged 21 points, 10.5 assists, and 7.1 rebounds in what we all consider a very down year for James Harden. And that's truly unbelievable and truly a testament to his greatness that he averaged 10.5 assists and 21 points, and we consider that a down year. In fact, those stats are better than Steve Nash's year when he won the MVP. The difference is the way that we look at these players and the way that the media narrative is built around these players. And that's why I think this move was so important for James Harden, because you would have the entire media and sports fans turning against James Harden, calling him a quitter on Houston, a quitter on Brooklyn, couldn't show up in the playoffs. And what you fear and what you worry about is what happens to a lot of guys at the end of their career when they start to deteriorate, start to go downhill, is that you got a lot of the younger generation who didn't watch some of these players in their prime, and just remember these last few years when, wait, Dwight Howard was good? The guy gets 5 minutes a game for the Lakers now. That guy was good. And that's the problem. Dwight Howard just didn't make the top 75. When you look at Dwight Howard's resume, he should have been in that top 75. But because of the recent years and the perception of Dwight Howard, it's dropped. So that's what James Harden was in. That was a threat for him, because a lot of people were debating, is James Harden in the top 5 shooting guards of all time? You got obviously Michael, you got Kobe, you got Dwayne Wade, number 3. And then you're starting to have discussions. I don't know what you consider Oscar Robertson. Maybe you consider him a point guard. You got Clyde Drexler. You got a bunch of other good shooting guards in history. But James Harden was right there fighting in that discussion for a top 5 shooting guard of all time. And the best player ever to not win a ring. He was in that discussion. I started to hear after this season the media narrative shift on that. Say that James Harden's clearly not better than Malone now, clearly not better than Barkley. And I'm not saying that he is, but what I'm saying is that before he was in those conversations, and he's starting to shift away from those. So it is imperative that James Harden has a bounce back year and his team has success, because that's what's important for James Harden. Now, his playoff struggles and his struggles in big moments are a tad overstated. James Harden is an all-time regular season player. We all agree on that. In fact, he had the 4th highest scoring season of all time. Now, Wilt had 5 he was technically 9th, but 5 of them were Wilt, and then I think 2 were MJ, and then 1 was Elgin Baylor. And I hope my math counted up there. I sound like an idiot. But then it was James Harden. So only Wilt, MJ, and Elgin Baylor had a higher points per game season than James Harden has had. In the last 2 years, he's also averaged over 10 assists a game. So that is wildly impressive when you look at it from a regular season perspective. He's truly one of the greatest stat pushers of all time. And a lot of people use that in a negative connotation. I don't as much. I think if it doesn't contribute to winning and you're just pushing stats, but you're never making the playoffs and never in real competition for anything, then I don't look at it. But James Harden took his team to the Western Conference Finals a couple times. And he was a big piece in the Thunder making their only finals, and then as soon as he left, they couldn't make it back. Now, he was the 6th man at that time, but he's the 3rd best player on a championship on a team that made the championship. That is very impressive, and we got to give him credit for some of those things. He also took that Golden State Warriors team that was seen as unbeatable with Kevin Durant. He took them 7 games. Now, Chris Paul was also on the squad, and you got to give Chris Paul a lot of credit, but James Harden was also on that squad, and he finished top 2 in MVP for 4 consecutive years. So this guy was the model of consistency, and he played every night. And my point is, I think Harden has just been overhated to an extent. What is important for the Sixers this year is that in the playoffs, they need to have someone who performs better than they have in the past. We give Joel Embiid way too much of a pass for his playoff struggles. And every year we have an excuse. He's sick, he's injured, doesn't have enough help. Ben Simmons is out 1 year. And some of these things are legitimate excuses, but at some point I need you to perform. You got James Harden, who, like I said, is a little overstated how much he struggled in the playoffs, but certainly there's a drop-off in the playoffs from the regular season. Joel Embiid, who certainly there's a drop-off. Doc Rivers, who I think is the most overrated coach in the NBA. And then you got a young guy in Tyrese Maxey. You got Tobias Harris on that squad, who didn't perform good in the big moments last year. You had PJ Tucker, Danuel House. I can't remember if Danny Green's still on that roster. But the important thing that I think that next year brings, Joel Embiid needs to be that same dominant player in the playoffs. James Harden needs to give you 20 and 10 in the playoffs. You're playing enough minutes, but the important thing for James Harden is for him to recover from his hamstring injury, because he wasn't as explosive last year, and that can take 4 to 6 points off of your scoring average immediately. So if he can get some of his explosion back, then that would be massive for the Philadelphia 76ers. And then Tyrese Maxey needs to take that next step to maybe even be their second leading scorer, but You have Embiid, Maxey, Harden facilitating the offense, playing a little more of a true point guard role. And then you have PJ Tucker standing in the corner, Tobias Harris as kind of that slashing wing. The Sixers could be a real threat next year. And I think I'm so excited for the NBA next season because the East is going to be awesome to watch. There's so many good teams and it's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Appreciate you taking a second to watch the channel. Please take a second to like and subscribe. We're going to keep growing, keep grinding. Cyborg out.